Welcome back to Inside Singapore Sports Business. I'm your host Adele, and we are here again at the National Stadium at Singapore Sports Hub. In today's ISSB episode, we're going to take a look at the importance of data and analytics in sports. Our show is brought to you in collaboration with Sports Singapore and the Toad Board. Let's get going. We are now seated here with Mr. Benoit Croissant, Commercial Director at Catapult Sports, and Mr. Vijay Lodiya, Director of Engineering at Rapsodo. Thank you so much for joining us today, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Happiness.
So I'm actually really psyched because I do enjoy talking about technology, but please give our audience a little bit about your personal and your professional backgrounds before we start.
Do I start first?
Yes, please.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
please.
So, first of all, you pronounce my name very well, Benoit Croissant. So, as you can see, guess I'm French. So, born in France, former professional football player. So, I played at the elite level for for over 20 years in different countries, and I finished my career here in Singapore for Tampines Rovers. Since then, I'm living here in Singapore. I've been creating a few companies. I've been an entrepreneur, so having a sports marketing agency. I was a FIFA agent, and for the past 7 years now, I'm working for Catapult Sports, and I'm the commercial director for Southeast Asia, the Indian subcontinent, and the Middle East region.
Cool. Lots to talk about. How about yourself, Vijay? Can you give a quick introduction to our audience about your personal background, professional background?
So I came from India. I'm a Singaporean. I came from India 18 years back. And I did my master's in NUS, and it's a great journey for the last 18 years in Singapore. I worked in different technologies in encryption, wireless media, and audio-video signal processing before joining Rapsodo. Rapsodo, I joined as a technical director. I started actually working on computer vision, and I've been a part of a great success story, a great startup story in Singapore. And I've been working as a director of engineering in the last 5 years.
The last 5 years. So I think, at ISSB, we typically do a lot of interviews about sports businesses. I am very excited about this one because maybe, Catapult Sports and Rapsodo are not names that the general commercial audience would be that familiar with. But I think what you guys offer is so interesting. So perhaps you can give us an introduction about what your companies do. Benoit, would you like to start with Catapult Sports?
I'm starting, okay. So to me, in sport, there are four major industries. To me, it's first of all is management. So management is how you manage your team, your roster, how you scout. I'm talking about elite sports. Then you have performance and health. You have tactical and coaching, and you have fans engagement. So for us at Catapult, we mainly focus in performance and health and tactical and coaching. So how do we do that? Is using data the best way possible. So we have a certain stack of technology. First one is wearables that can be used by elite athletes, elite teams, football associations, such as the football national team of Singapore. But if you are going to run across the stadium and you want to have your own device, you can also have it. So you will have access to much more metrics than what you've got in your watch now. And I would say that one very important component is also how you can put some context with those data, because now you have lots of teams using data, but sometimes they don't really understand how to use it. Yes. So you need to contextualize, how you use this data. So that's why we spend a lot of time designing new platforms, like video platforms, where basically you can bring your physical output into your video footage. So you are able to analyze in a better way the phase of plays and understand how your athletes are performing, and bringing those physical data give more context to trainings and to games.
What kind of context are you talking about when you say giving more context to the data?
Yeah, so I'll give an example. If, for instance, now we are now in the Singapore stadium, beautiful stadium, by the way. If we are looking at the game, the national team playing, and you have the winger going on the side and on the wing and passing one or two players, then crossing and scoring the goal. You want to know how this happened. So one kind of intensity, because using a wearable device is to basically capturing all the movement of your players. So when you are using that kind of data, if you integrate those physical data into the video footage, it will give you like a all-in-one solution where you will be able to look at everything about tactical, which is how did he do, how did he manage to dribble, and then the physical data will come. So how can you adapt your training sessions? How can you adapt your program through the season between games and make sure that it can repeat it if it's successful? If you concede a goal, why this happened? How this happened through the game? At which period of the game? Is it in the first half, in the second half? Was he tired? Or, so there are lots of things that you can look and integrate it into the video platform.
So we will no longer have one-trick wonders, because now we can almost hack our players with data and make sure that we can help them recreate that, the magic moment that they had.
That's exactly what it is before, we had teams, I'm speaking about elite teams now, they were using a different software. So a software for wearables, where they collect the data, and then you have another software where they use any kind of video supplier or third party. But it's two different things. So what we want to do is to save time, for the coaches, for the analysts, and making sure that the workflow is better, is faster. Then having everything in one single platform makes the job easier for the whole coaching staff. And instead of using a third party like optical data that most of the team can afford because it's too expensive, basically you can afford something that will bring you everything in one solution.
So here's a little bit of a cheeky question for you. Would you then say, with access to science, technology, and data, that we can almost even up the playing field between a highly talented player and a maybe not so talented player, but with science now, maybe we can close the gap a little bit?
Yes, indeed. I mean, I'm a former professional football player. So now I always wonder what would happen in my career if I would have had access to those data. Because I had injuries, I had through my career, and basically there are two very important things when you use data in sports, is optimizing performance and making sure that you speed up the return to play. So if you have a player that is injured, who is injured, you want to make sure that he comes back. When he comes back, you want to make sure that he's fully fit to come back. Because me, during my career, when I was playing, if I get injured, the coach will push me to play back, but I'm not ready. My body is not ready. So using those data give you some benchmark to make sure that your player is ready to play. So same goes to your question. I come back to a question where, in terms of players development, if you want to know if a player is ready to play at the highest level, now we have the data. Those data will help a club to make sure that if a player is ready to play for the second team, if he's ready to play for first team, if he's not ready at all, and remain in his age category.
Wow. So many questions about that. But before that, we'll let Vijay introduce what Rapsodo does.
So Rapsodo is a sports tech company, actually. So our Rapsodo, our mission is to develop data-driven technologies to help the athletes to reach the potential. So we have hundreds of thousands of players using our products in softball, baseball, and also in golf, actually. So if you look at actually the last 10 years, right, technology is helping the digital transformations in many areas. The sports is not alone, actually, right? So, and the recent advancements in AI, as well as actually in camera sensors, this is becoming more data-driven, and this acceleration is happening actually in the last 5 years quite quickly, actually. And that's where Rapsodo comes in, actually. Rapsodo uses these technologies to drive actionable parameters from the player action. So let's take an example actually, right?
I love examples. Let's do it.
Right. So Rapsodo is basically in ball sports. So our sports is more or less in like a golf, which is tennis, cricket, baseball, all ball sports actually. So if you look at the ball sports, it's obvious there are three key actions. One of them is actually the body motion, right? The body is trying to move and hit a club actually, and then the club hits the ball. That's in the golf actually, right? The ball travels right now. So we split these three actions actually. One is the body motion, the club 3D path, and the ball trajectory. You derive parameters from each and every action that's happening with the player. Once you combine these actions actually, you get a powerful data. And that data gives you the cause and effect analysis, right? The player is doing something, the ball is going somewhere, and we integrate this connection, and that is where actually the coach gets it actually, what's happening with the player. And that feedback to the player empowers him to understand what's right, what's wrong, right? So our technology is not trying to replace the coaches. Our technology is trying to help the coaches to understand what's happening with the player and understands the data that we are providing actually to the player so that they can improve actually, right? So in these three technologies actually, if I go for it actually in the body motions, we derive kinematic variables. And then we have club, or we have a bat, or we have a racket, or a hockey bat. So all these three are actually basically just moving actually, right? So when we work on these things actually, Rapsodo comes with two categories of technologies that they develop actually. One of them is we call performance measurement devices, another is analytics platform. So once we have two different platforms, one is basically, is basically non-intrusive, affordable, easy to use, portable product. So where we can place in the stadiums, or we can place actually in your training academies or in the colleges environment. Okay, these devices is just around us. The players can go and pitch a ball, can hit a ball, and when they happen, actually, data are collected.
How big are these devices? Just so
these devices are about just like a kind of a SLR camera. So it's very small, portable. We just have it some other on the ground. Okay, we have small actually a pocket size actually a launch monitor in the golf. So we have different products actually in the golf and baseball market. So when we have these two platforms, one of the platforms is an analytics platform that provides actually statistical performance. For example, a player is playing. He's playing and continuously trying to improve actually. So what improvement he has over the period of time. Right? This is what the statistical performance comes to it actually. What is the benchmark? How good is he related to the best player? Right? We try to provide these data and combine this together, helps the coaches and the players to achieve their full potential.
So what I'm hearing from both of you is that you work a lot with professional level elite players. What about the consumer? What about people like me? Now that I'm hearing this from you, I remember trying to learn tennis, and because I started in badminton, never understood tennis, did not want to play it. But now that I'm hearing this, I'm like, oh wow, actually, if there was some kind of technology, some kind of platform that helped me see what I was doing wrongly and understand it differently.
Exactly there where we come in actually, right? You think about actually you are swinging your racket and you are trying to hit the ball. Where is it hitting the ball? Which location? The middle of the bat? What is your swing speed looks like? Where are you trying to hit the ball? What location is going to place there? How consistent you are hitting it actually? When you get these parameters, you know where are you actually? What are you doing? Okay. And sports is a game of consistency, right, in terms of actually athlete training. So we provide this consistent data, right? Where are you? What you did in 6 months back, now where are you actually currently? What you change, for example, the spin of the ball is quite important in the tennis, right? What spin you are able to introduce with this ball? And we measure this, and we provide this in a data format that you can consume an actionable way actually, so that you can change something in your, in your swing, or actually the way that you hit in the back actually. All these things, that's what we are trying to achieve in tennis is an example. We're trying to enter into it. We exactly asked this question. We are glad to have this question.
I mean, I read that especially for elite and professional sportsmen, visualization is key. Right. And with technology, it makes visualization so much easier. Would you say that?
Yeah, 100%. Visualization, I think is the base of football. When I was 13 years old, the first thing that I've learned, when I've joined the the National Center of Clairefontaine, which is like where all the French teams go. So basically, I left my little village to go to that biggest academy in Europe at that time. And our coach, when we were 13 years old, told us visualization is the most important thing to do, is to being able to visualize, what you do in order to basically getting better. So at that point of time, we were using even video, but imagine they had the old camera, so we're trying to visualize, things. So, and trying to improve. So he was very right saying that having consistent data is key. Everything about sports and data is about comparison. So you compare yourself for consumer every time you go once a week play tennis, or how you get the thing better, you swing better, or when you play golf. By the way, I'm still waiting for the device so I can try it. and then when you play football, it's the same thing. So some friends playing five-a-side football, on a weekly basis. And again, this is how you're going to use this data and compare it on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, and trying to improve, so that goes together, I would say.
Right, we have a great actually, right, the same concept, same vision we have actually. Yeah. That's what we are trying to use the data and achieve and help the athletes actually. So if you look at actually, you exactly asked this question about actually the visual part. So we have a product called a mobile launch monitor. So if you look at actually the golfers, amateurs, like in the driving range, they'll be hitting actually the balls and boringly looking actually where the ball goes and continuously start hitting again and again, right? Think about you have a small device, instantly giving you feedback. What are you doing actually with your video actually? And then what is the ball is going, where the ball will be landing, what is your trajectory looks like. When they see this, they get a feedback, they get a reflection actually what they are doing it. And they understand, hey, what I'm doing wrong actually. Maybe they have a swing path is wrong, or the club is open face or closed face. And that shows up actually like, how can I improve? That drives them to change that actually. And that's what we are involved actually, using the visual information. Today the camera speeds are very high with the iPhones are 200 FPS actually, right? People like to see these high speed videos, slow motion videos. So Rapsodo does this, combine the slow motion videos, trajectory of the balls and the club swings, and then combine this together and provide them actually instant feedback and reflection. And that helps them like, oh yeah, wow, I get this actually. I know what is going wrong. And that's what they get to.
It's a very important one, you just say now, because when we use video now with Catapult is basically trying to give something that is easy to use. Because an analyst, in a video analyst, for instance, in the UK, in an English Premier League, for instance, or in the NBA, he will only focus on this task, being able to analyze, the pre-training, training, post-training, same for the game, pre-game and game and post-game analysis. In that part of the world, they don't have someone that is dedicated to video. So basically, you need to provide them with a solution that is easy to use, like a solution that will give you all the insight to improve the performance, optimize. Again, we're speaking about optimizing the performance of your athletes, and basically having like the tools to make it happen. So Rapsodo is very convincing what you do. I find it great, for us, which is really focused now on football and rugby with video, because the main elite teams are using it, is basically being able to, on that video platform, to take one player from one place, to scrap it, to put it on the other place. Instead of being here, you should be there. So next time in that phase of play, we don't want you to be there. We want you to be there because the distance between you, the defense, or between you and the goalkeeper is too short. So that the little thing that can improve. And when those players visualize that, it's changed the whole thing. It changed the way they perceive their own play, perceive how the team is playing, and basically it's, I would say, smooth and ease the communication between the coaching staff and the players.
So what I'm hearing from Catapult and Rapsodo is you have both so many technological devices for athletes and professional elites. But what about for the consumers? Do you provide this? Do you have a different consumer-friendly line, or are they using the same devices as the elites?
At Rapsodo, actually, we have two different product segments. One is for enterprise, and another is consumer. Because it's sometimes too much of data is also not helpful actually for a consumer, actually, right? So we need to put the right data for consumers. So we have in Gold, we have a personal launch monitor. It's a sub $500 product actually for consumers. Actually, that's they can buy it from Amazon. They can use it in their home. Actually, they can play there actually. And we also have an enterprise level product that has everything like what I described actually, from kinematics to the club data to the ball data. And that's not everything is needed for the consumer. So we split this into two categories actually. So we also have a different level of products for in the baseball for actually in major league teams. They need actually kind of different elements. For academies and colleges, for amateur players, actually, are the kids that they're trying to actually learn about the baseball. We have a different product segments also there actually. So, and Rapsodo is all about affordable. We are not trying to make something technology that's only for the elite players. So we want to reach about thousands of players who can actually use our devices and can improve their game actually. And so one of them is, as I discussed about it actually, this baseball and the golf. And we're trying to enter the similar thing in the cricket and tennis, so that actually the consumer can use this product and with the help of coach, of course, actually try to improve their games.
What about at Catapult? Can I wear the same kind of wearable devices as an elite professional?
You can if you have the budget. But so there are differences. So as I said, we have the wearable segment and we have the video segment. So if we speak about wearables, we have like a kind of product that is designed for really elite, I would say, clients, such as NBA, NHL, all those kind of entities or franchise that can really afford whatever they want on a yearly basis. So we call it Clear Sky. So basically, instead of using the GPS signals, we install anchors within the stadia, so in stadia, so that the accuracy of your data when you are moving is less than 1 centimeter. So this is the best, basically, data that you can find in terms of performance, for elite. Then if we go down, we have another product called Vector. So basically, it's the French football national team, the Singapore national team. So they use that wearable that will provide them with certain number of metrics. They can customize it and they can do report. They can basically customize the report the way they want. Now, of course, we are here to support them. Then we go to the consumer side. The consumer side is, it's a product that we call Catapult One. So basically is anybody can purchase it. It's affordable. So you go online, you buy it, you have your device, and you will have like kind of 10 metrics. So this can be used for 60 different sports outdoor, because we use GPS signals, so you don't use it indoor. But basically, you will be able to have an app, Android app or iPhone app, you will have access to a software. So that, I would say, product can be used for teams and individuals. So if a small team wants to have a team software, they will have it. So they can share data, each athlete will be able to get their own data on the app. So it's pretty great, to, again, being able to share those kind of things with your players, and it's pretty standard. So it's not customizable like Elite, because they don't have any, scientists, to work behind the scenes. So it's standard. But you have something that is a kind of benchmark, because we have so much data at Catapult, working with, 4,000 elite teams in 60 different sports in 137 countries, that at the end we are able to make a benchmark where the guy that is playing in the five-a-side pitch here will be able to compare himself with Benzema, for example. So that's what we can do at our level. And then for video, sorry, I'm a bit long. For the video is basically, it's dispatched. You can break it down in 3 different elements, which is you use it live. You have a hub where you can share data with the different, I would say, staff, that, they can put it within the hub. And then you have Match Tracker. So what is Match Tracker? Match Tracker is basically allow any sports team to integrate third-party data. And the software will analyze the data for you, so the report will be done automatically. So even competitors that didn't want to work with us, or clubs who didn't want to work with us, now they want to work with us. Because at the end of the day, it's again all-in-one solution. So this is where we go from consumer to elite, and for video, the consumer will only use live because they can only, I would say, in terms of budget, invest into a live software to do some post-game analysis if they want to.
So Vijay, earlier you mentioned that, sometimes too much data is not good. And yet, we all know that right now, if we don't have data, it almost sounds like we'd be completely disadvantaged in any kind of sports if we don't have the data that our opponents have. But what would you consider too much data?
So the data is not data that is more important. The data that is actionable data is more important. So we learn from the data what action we can take from it. Actually, that's quite important. Actually, so if you look at we can derive hundreds of data from each and every action that's going on. The body movement, for example, our joint positions, our pelvis rotations, shoulder rotations, hip rotations. All these things can be converted into a data. Angles and everything can be converted. Right? Think of a motion of a club, a 3D trajectory, then the club phase angles, attack angles, the ball trajectory with the angles, the launch angles, spin of the ball. Like this, you have so much of data. Like what these data are useful. Can a mature player can understand this, right? So I give an example. Like my kid goes to a tennis coaching, right? I speak to a coach and I ask him about, can you use our technology? And he answered is like, yeah, well, right? We don't know how to use this data. Answer is right. So it's about the level where the performance they want. That's where the data is quite useful. For a kid, it may not be useful, but as a parent, I love to get the data from the coach, right? So what was my kid doing in the 6 months back, right? And then after 6 months, what improvement? If I get a data in objective way, can I analyze it? It's really easy for me to understand how my kid has grown in the last 6 months. In terms of the coaching, in terms of the training, right? That's what I feel as a parent. I get that, right? But a coach point of view thinks too much of data. I don't know how I'm going to use it, But a coach, maybe in a professional level, can understand this, okay? Because in the elite level. So that's what I mentioned, Different player needs different level of data.
Right. So basically anything that's measurable, that we can understand, that we can take action to improve upon. So then now I have another tricky question for you, Benoit. So you came from a professional football background. With all these data, how would you say, does this impede a player relying on their instinct?
Yes, this will never change. What is important for players or for coaching staff and analysts is to quantify that data in order to really, again, optimize performance and maybe minimizing injuries. I don't really like when people say you can use those data to minimize injuries. You can basically find a spot where is the best, I would say, level that an athlete can achieve. So this is like a kind of benchmark that we can use. But I would say that a player nowadays has the chance and the opportunity to look at those data. So basically, when a training is done, you can use an iPad or a computer where they will look at those data. So a player, it can only help the player to get better. The instinct, the talent can't be discussed. It can only get improved if he's got the will to do it. At 14 years old, I played with some players which were much better than me, but never succeeded because you have other components such as mental, probably luck, opportunity, behavior, environment you're living in. That's so much what you eat, what you drink. So it's not only about that. But if a player, an athlete is willing to succeed, nowadays, he needs data. He needs those data in it. I think your son was a very good example, is where if he wants to improve and get to that level, he needs this data. He doesn't say that because of the data, he will be restrained to be more like flashy on the pitch, etc. No. It will make him better because all those solutions can only help him to be a better athlete.
So before, when we have that one magic hat trick, and the player said, I don't know how I did it, I can never do it again maybe. But now we can actually break it down with all of your technology. Indeed.
And if I have a very good example for that is I was looking at La Liga, and now when you watch at a game live, you can have access to a certain metric, which is when a player, again, I will quote again, Benzema is my favorite player, so I do it purposely. But when he receives a ball on the box, that metric will say he has like 10, 20, 30 or 50% chance to score because of his position on the field, because of the defenders around him. So they will do a metric that will allow the fans, to look at it. And even when Benzema is at 30% to score, what he's going to do is going to score. You know what I mean? But most of us will never score that kind of goal. But that's what I mean is you don't, put away the talent and the instinct of the players, especially at this level.
Wow, okay. This is a huge, I was very excited and I'm very satisfied with the information that we're getting about technology and data and how it's going to improve our lives in sports. So I think people really love data, love having something that they can measure statistics against. How is the market in Asia or specifically Singapore responding to your companies, to Catapult and to Rapsodo?
So yeah, we'll start. So basically, so a very good example here. We are working with the Football Association of Singapore for the past 5 years, and I just received a notification on Facebook to tell me that 5 years ago we signed a deal with them, and this partnership is just great. I would say that the main national team, the U23, and even the women's national team now is using, the data, and using our system, our solution. And I'm very happy because I have a daughter. She plays football, and she's pretty talented. And I really see that there is also like a kind of not a market, but something to be done for women's football. And I would say very proudly that now we did some very nice partnership, for example, with the Thai women's national team, the Philippines women's national team. And for the first time ever in the history, we helped them, using our data to, I would say, maintain a great performance of that team. And for the first time, they qualify for World Cup. So that's a very great achievement this year.
The Philippines women's team.
The women's national team. So there is something great for that. I would say that we are in discussions with many different sports, many other federations. Of course, they're all interested because they all want to work with us, and how we can help. So, and I really hope that in the near future we'll be able to help, especially the development of the kids, the women's football, etc. As for Asia, I can quote Johor Darul Taksim, which is JDT, the biggest club in Malaysia, the first team that won the Asian Cup. So we worked with them for the past 6-7 years. We have 90% of the clubs football in Malaysia, 90% of the club in Thailand, the football national team of Thailand that just won the Suzuki Cup here. So Buriram United, so all those big clubs and football association work with us. Then you have Hockey Field, Malaysia, the Malaysia Hockey Confederation, so big fan of us. Again, the women's going to be using our system next year. So there are a lot of things across the different countries which are amazing. And of course, I will not quote, the Japan, market, Chinese market, where most of them are with us, So basically, I'm happy because I work with the global leader in sports analytics at the elite level, I would say, and we keep evolving, we keep being innovative, and we hope that in Singapore we'll be able to bring that innovation for the different sports and federation and be part of that project for the next 10 or 20 years.
Wow. So you're basically everywhere. There's nowhere in the world that has a very vibrant sports team that does not.
But even I manage the Indian subcontinent, in India. So all the hockey teams, hockey India, Bangladesh, all of them, Sri Lanka, all of them work with us. But I think the key point in here is also support. For all our lead clients, we provide like a premium support. So it's not we are talking about data, having too much data. Isn't it dangerous or isn't it too much, because they don't really understand the meaning of this data. So we support the client. So we educate the client. We do workshops, like we just finished a 5-day workshop for 2 universities in India last week, for instance. So we do a lot of things to educate people, and that is key.
What kind of workshops?
Workshops is usage of wearables, meanings of the data, basic metrics, using of video software, that kind of metrics where data is an important, as I repeat myself, a component of sports nowadays.
Wow, I'm still like blown away by the amount of hacking we're actually doing with our professional sports people these days with technology. And for Rapsodo, I know you guys are doing a lot of research here in Singapore as well.
Yeah, that's true actually. I mean, as we are started from Singapore actually, right? We grew up from Singapore and we're now in 4 countries actually, and 100,000 players are using our product actually. So in US about actually 50,000 players in the baseball, in all over actually US and Canada have been using our products. In the golf side actually, we are about selling about like actually 50,000 personal launch mounted devices every year to many amateur and elite golfers actually. It's not only US, Singapore, Japan, Europe, China, as well as actually Southeast Asia actually. It's all because golf is a universal sport actually, right? So the demographic is from actually young age to the old age. So people like to buy these golf devices. So primarily we are in this golf personal launch mounted devices. In Singapore, actually, we have about an R&D team developing actually all these advanced technologies. So if you look at Rapsodo, actually, as I mentioned about non-intrusive technologies, as we are not in the wearable market, actually, our technology is primarily in using actually camera sensors, radars, lidars, actually. These kind of technologies in autonomous car driving. We use these technologies for player action tracking and then actually data metrics collection. So when we combine these technologies, actually, that's where actually Rapsodo is able to provide all this data analytics. So if we look at actually our Rapsodo product portfolio, we have 2 segments. One is actually performance measurement devices. Another is actually this analytics platform. In Singapore, we manufacture these performance measurement devices with these technologies. And in Singapore R&D office, actually, we work on kinematics currently. And we're also trying to enter into other sports like tennis and cricket, which is quite close to actually baseball and golf. So that's what we're trying to enter into the ball sports. Unlike Catapult, we are not in the team sports yet, actually. We are basically player development. It's all about player development, actually. How can we improve the player performance? So that's what we are in currently, actually. And as I mentioned, actually, the Major League Baseball teams, 30 teams in the US, they are using our product. And as well as actually Japan, Korea, all these professional teams are using our products for player training. And we are trying to get into this actually stadium tracking actually of real data, which is basically having multiple camera devices like Hakai actually, which is working on actually, right, in cricket, measuring the ball, bat, and performance trajectories. So we are into this, trying to get into this actually in-game tracking actually of ball data, and that's what we are working on currently in Singapore.
Take us back to the early days, like many years ago, when sports data technology was still new. Would you say that adoption was easy? Were people hungry for like this kind of data, or were they like skeptical in the beginning? If you can remember what it was like before.
Yes, you're absolutely right, actually. It was very difficult for us to sell the data, actually, right? As you rightly pointed out, it's all about education. What is the data is for? What does this means for player development? It needs training the coaches, actually, with what the data provides. So initially, people always will be skeptical. 10 years back, actually, right? It's always skeptical. What is this data about? I know how to coach, actually, right? That's what the coaches will think about it, actually, right? But think about actually the coaches are always in a kind of subjective assessment, and Rapsodo provides objective assessment. When we combine these two together, actually the team gets this actually the benefit of actually how to unleash the potential of the player, because when both are coming up actually together, right, it's not just one actually, and the team understands. That's really great. That's helpful very much. And now we are getting the feedback, right? Yes, your data are really helpful actually, and we can understand, we can improve the player. Some of the players are getting drafted using our devices in the Major League Baseball teams because they use our devices. They're able to throw faster. They're able to throw with balls with a spin that is impossible to hit actually. So these are the technologies that we are developing in, and the players use our technologies and then come back and tell us, yeah, we like your devices, and we are able to draft to an MLB team and get into a game. So that's what we hear from them.
So compared to now, 10 years ago versus now, or however many years ago versus now, adoption would you say now it's like piece of cake people get it immediately. Yes, I want this, I need
now
this.
It's piece of cake. Companies like Catapult are there in the market actually. It's not difficult for us because 10 years back to sell actually data, it was very difficult. So US was very advanced actually trying to use the data. They are the first one to use the data actually, right? And compared to other markets like actually in Japan, even Japan, it was very hard to really make them understand actually how the data can be valuable to them 5 years back. But today it's quite different actually. There are so many companies using wearable technologies, like you exactly mentioned with Apple, fitness actually, all our data. Today everything is data actually. We understand, right? And so it's quite easy for us to go and sell it actually, hey, these are the data. And now people want more data. And that's what we're getting into it, right? The kinematics is the one actually we are talking about, right? So they want actually everything, body motion analysis, pelvis, joint, knee angles actually, shoulder movement, hip rotations, everything they want to know actually. See, today if you look at actually, right, one of the major problems in sports industry is injury, right? So the injury happens because the players use a wrong technique or they're over, trained. So that's where Rapsodo comes into this, these technologies, okay? So with our body motion analysis, okay, kinematics data, we think with all these angles and pelvis motions and everything, we can come up with what is the right technique to follow, right? So we can work with actually coaches and ask them actually, hey, if you use these parameters, you can tell the player, hey, this is the right way to throw a ball. This is the right way to hit a ball. This is the right way to move your hip and shoulder movement actually. That's the wrong way actually, and that's what Rapsodo is helping, right? We believe with our kinematics technology, we can help the athletes to follow the right technique and avoid actually injuries.
So before we talk about the future, I'm going to ask Benoit to take us back to the past. Clearly in the present, Catapult has been completely adopted everywhere by professionals. But do you remember, was there ever a time where adoption was not so easy?
So how it started in the early 2000s where the Australian delegation went to the Olympic Games and had one of the worst Olympic Games of the history. And from that day, they wanted to create something to optimize the performance of the players and making sure that they can bring more medals for the country. So two engineers designed the first wearable, and that person, one of the engineers, became the CEO of Catapult. So that was the first wearable technology in the world in early 2000. So of course it took time before, in the early start, they always look at a top-bottom approach where if the best, I would say, use it, all the other ones will follow. So they went to the US, they went to a few big, big fishes, and they were pretty successful. And slowly, they managed to expand, in a few major countries. And then once the country becomes listed, they needed more engineers, more CSS, customer success specialists and managers, and of course sales. So this is where for each and every region at Catapult, you always have a team with a sales guy and a CSS. Then we needed to find local people. You cannot ask someone from America to come here and sell, to sell in Vietnam, for instance. So we had to be very open to that, and then educating. So this is the right thing, is educating people. 7 years ago when I started in Southeast Asia and I had that huge task to penetrate that market, it wasn't easy. It was tough because people didn't use any technology. So the first 18 months were education, traveling, education, demo. Now I don't do much demo because we have a big team, but it was what I was doing, going there and making demos. And slowly, people understood. Took a while for them to use it, understand the meaning of those data. And now we're in Southeast Asia. I would say that, most of the teams, elite teams, are using data.
Yeah, now even the consumers are aware and they want in on it. And then last question for the both of you. If you can share, what is the future of sports data, sports technology in your field? What do you think it looks like? Are we going to have, will you move into VR, kinetic?
Right, the technology is moving to the VR and AR market actually, right? For example, actually, sports is not only about actually, player development, it's also entertainment actually, right? So one of the areas that we look into is actually we call gamification of sports, right?
Gamification, everything these days.
Right. So it's gamification. So look at actually somebody's in the US actually, right? It's 6 months of winter there. They can't go and play outdoor actually. So they want to play in Sentosa here. How can you bring Sentosa in US actually? And that's where gamification happens. So we have a little device. You can go and hit a ball there, and then the ball travels, and they can go and play 18-hole course game in Sentosa with virtualization there. We have a simulation, and then when you have a VR actually, that's what coming up in the future training actually, right? So there is no need for somebody has to throw a ball actually, and then you have to hit actually, right? For a practice to hit actually, you can have a VR glass, and you can go and hit a ball, right? This ball can be visualized, and they can hit it. You get a haptic feedback, and then we get to actually come up with some parameters from there, and that's what actually the future is going on. And in even future, actually, what we look at actually is sports is becoming, more predictive analysis. So what's going to happen in the game? This data analytics, what's Catapult is coming up, is going to decide actually what will happen in the game in future, right? It's kind of a betting market, right? What's going to happen next actually? So when you have this data, when you have this analytics in real time actually, people can decide who will win the game. Okay, and that's where the future is going on. And the reason advances in artificial intelligence, right? It's easier to make it happen in real time actually. You can see who is moving fast, what's happening, how many passes are happening actually. All these things it's all real time. People are able to come up with the data actually. Okay, and that's what we think actually the future for sports and training. Okay, and in the way we see game analytics, that's the most important thing. I think catapults are there. Okay, we look forward there actually. They are.
Yeah, the thing is all about having a roadmap, for a company. So at the end of the day, there are things that we can't communicate, but also you have some periods of crisis like the COVID-19. So when you have a certain roadmap for the next 2-3 years, and then you have COVID-19 crisis coming, you need to basically understand what your client need during that period of time. So this period of time has been a bit disrupted when we had to create new innovations for our clients. So we started with Bayern Munich, etc., when they couldn't train all together. So we needed to create a way for each player to use their wearable from home and being able to upload the data, and it goes automatically to the administrator software. So this is something that we have done. So now a lot of people are doing it, which is great. It is fantastic, and for us is we're leveraging of what we've got, our data, our client. It's what we see here, what we have seen in the past 18 months is we have done a lot of work with the Formula One, for instance, where we are very involved into that. Esports, it's on the way, it's on the road, which it's confidential, and licensing. We do a lot of licensing in the US, for instance. So when you watch an Hollywood movie and you see someone drinking a beer in a bar, and behind you have a screen with like an NFL player throwing a ball, this has most of the time. But it's really focused on the US market. So again, this is what we do. You have different fields, but what you say, Vijay, before, I think is very interesting. Gamification of the industry is just what is the future. AI is. I think it explained it very well. Yeah.
Wow, this has been so enlightening. Thank you so much, Vijay and Benoit, for sharing with us today.
Thank you very much.
Is there anything that you wanted to add before we close today's session? I think if you've given us so much.
I know you're learning French, so merci beaucoup. And it was a pleasure. Thank you very much to be there.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
We look forward to greater things from Catapult and from Rapsodo.
Thank you for having us.
So much happening here in wearable technology as well as sports data and analytics. We hope you've enjoyed today's episode as much as we have, and see you next time.